The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, a gloomy day here in Southern California. But we have my favorite baseball guy on right now. He's the second most famous buster in baseball, and he's on ESPN. He's on ESPN.com. You see him everywhere, and now he's here in the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Buster Olney, what's happening?
Not much, Bill. How are you doing?
How have you not had Buster Posey killed yet? He kind of stole your Buster Thunder.
I kind of enjoy it, but I must say that, I mean, literally, having lived, 47 years of being the only buster, generally speaking, that I know other than dogs and cats, I can't tell you how many times I've either, been on set at ESPN or I'm sitting at home and all of a sudden I hear someone say Buster on TV and my heart goes from about 60 beats to about 180 because I'm thinking, oh my God, what was someone talking to me? Was I supposed to be doing something?
Right.
I'm thinking a producer's trying to get my ear, but so I'm getting used to the idea that he's taken over Buster and running with it.
Biggest shock of the what are we now? We're almost 3 weeks into the season. Biggest shock of the season for you so far?
Two, I would say the Cleveland Indians. I didn't think there was any chance that they could be relevant this year, and they're a lot better team than people realize. Their lineup is going to be a lot tougher than people realize. Justin Masterson clearly turned the corner in the last 2 months last year, and if they have he and Fausto Carmona in front of that bullpen, that's a pretty good team, and we should be taking them seriously. And as they won games early, it was sort of like, well, that's kind of fun. They're more than that.
As a Red Sox fan, they lost 3 to the Rangers and 3 to the Indians, and it seemed like just an absolute apocalypse. But now watching the Indians, it not as much of an apocalypse because it's a good team.
I totally agree. That is a good team, but I will say that the other shocker for me is how poorly the Red Sox have played. The other day last week I was in Fenway Park and on the field, and we're talking to Dustin Pedroia, and here comes Adrian Gonzalez, and here comes Carl Crawford, and Kevin Youkilis is coming out, and Carl Ravitch was there, and we walked away, and he turned and said, "Man, they get a lot of talent," and that's the thing for a team with so much talent. Their slow start has been a huge surprise.
And it's not like, the normal reasons you see a high-priced team fall apart or start slow, and usually there's personality issues. Doesn't seem like there's really any personality issues. That for me, that's been the most perplexing thing, because as you said, if you go 1 through 25, on paper they have more talent than just about anybody, and it just doesn't make sense that it's not translating.
And one thing and you and I talked about, the last time we talked about, the Red Sox personality, and they had this great group of grinders, and they actually remind me of the Yankee teams that I covered in the late 90s, where they had Tino Martinez and Paul O'Neill and Girardi catching at that point, Jeter at shortstop. They had these guys who really went after it day after day after day, and I will tell you that the kryptonite of that team from time to time was the fact that they would wear themselves down. That intensity actually, once they would get into a losing streak, would start to turn inward. And I remember at the end of the 2000 regular season, they lost something like 16 out of 19, and Joe Torre basically had to chase them away from the field from doing extra batting practice. And this Red Sox team, Crawford is a worker, and Gonzalez is a worker, and Youkilis is a worker, and Dustin Pedroia is a worker. And you have seen times, especially with Crawford, where you can see them standing up there trying to hit an 8-run homer, and eventually they'll score a lot of runs. Eventually they're going to win a lot of games. But I do think that early on, that intensity has really actually been a problem.
Yeah, and you watch them; they'll pan to them in the dugout, and usually when a baseball team is running on all cylinders, everybody's talking to each other, and you'll see guys laughing. And like when we had Manny, You'd say Manny. Every time they showed Manny in the dugout, somebody was laughing at something he was doing. Now this team, they cut to the dugout. Everybody's just staring straight ahead at the field. It's a grim
and
team.
it's all self-loathing. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's each of those guys has that personality, and it's a part of the reason why they went after Crawford and they went after Gonzalez is because they respect their work ethic and how much they care, and that face that you're referring to. It's not like they're sitting there saying, "God, I can't believe these guys stink. Boy, I can't believe that Matsuzaka stinks." It's like, man, I'm awful, and it is a good thing that like Crawford, from what I understand, is telling friends that he's joking with friends a little bit. It's not like he's going into a bottle and not talking to anybody. He feels really confident that he'll turn around. And Adrian Gonzalez is relaxed enough that I think he'll eventually start hitting.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. It's going to come. He has great at-bats, and he'll have the 12th pitch at-bat every once in a while, and these swings where he takes the ball to opposite field, and you just watch him and you go, all right. Youkilis I'm a little more concerned about because I'm not totally sure he's healthy. And he also looks a little overweight to me. He looks a little doughy. Looks like, I don't know, he's got a little Joe. I mean, Tim Wakefield has a Joe, has the gut, but he's 55 years old. Like, it's going to happen at some point. Youkilis, to me, doesn't look like he's totally in shape. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
Well, I do think that he has been unlucky at times. I mean, I must have seen him hit like 4 or 5 rockets, where he's right at defensive players, and you can just see him really close. The one thing I will say about that, and I'm not a hitting instructor or anything like that, but I ran this theory past in the last couple of years, a couple of guys who really know hitting in the game, and I said, here's my thing on Youkilis, is that he has such a complicated approach, and he has all these different parts that need to work together in unison. And one of the great things about Youkilis is that, he has achieved far beyond what people believe his talent to be, because of that intensity. But I asked him, I said, is his hitting style such that once he begins to lose some of his physical skills, that it will be a more rapid decline than, say someone like a Rafael Palmeiro had that beautiful swing? And they completely agreed. And I have no idea if what we're seeing now is part of that or if it's just someone who's working through an early season slump. But they do think that Youkilis is not going to have a long shelf life just because of his particular, the way he goes about hitting.
Oh, now I'm depressed. Well, he is on base about 4. His OBP is 397. So even when he's slumping, he still gets on base. But the one thing that stands out, the Red Sox, 235 batting average. So I'm guessing that's probably not going to continue. At some point, that's going to come around. Are you going back to the Indians for a second? Sizemore just came back. Michael Brantley was playing really well for them. And if they get anything out of Sizemore, why couldn't that team win 95 games?
Well, think about it. They've gotten off this great start, and they have basically gotten almost nothing out of their best offensive player last few years, Shin-Soo Choo, and Carlos Santana, who's one of the best young catchers in all of baseball. And, you think about all they've accomplished despite the fact that the two guys who were supposed to be the anchors of their lineup haven't done anything. And it tells you a lot sort of about what they could do. Last week I was having a conversation with a GM of an American League team, and it just unprompted, he goes, Cleveland's got a really tough lineup, and what he was talking about wasn't, a team that's going to put up 1,000-run, prolific numbers, a bunch of home run hitters. He was talking about a team that could put up really tough at-bats, from Asdrubal Cabrera to Orlando Cabrera, Chu, Santana, where a starting pitcher is going to get worn down even if he allows, 2 runs over 5 innings. And this GM thinks that, that's going to be one of the reasons why the Indians are for real this year.
And they haven't played the Lonnie Chisenhall card yet. It's going to be really interesting to see when they play that because they have Jack Hanahan, who is arguably one of the 5 worst offensive players of the last 5-6 years, I would say. And you plug in Chisenhall, who everybody says is, he's on everybody's top hitting prospect list. And they didn't bring him up to start the season, even though he was great in spring training. And if he comes up and he's any good, and then Santana gets going, and then Sizemore could stay on the field, I think that's a real team. Like I think that's a team that I'm going to be afraid of going down the stretch.
Totally agree with you. And on the point on Sizemore that I think we should remember is that generally speaking, his rehab has been flawless to the point that on February 1st, I asked someone in the Indians organization, okay, give me your best guesstimate on when Sizemore is going to be back. And he said, look, he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. If I had to guess, I would say tax day. Well, he only missed by 1 day. And Grady, talked during the wintertime about how he just wanted to follow the advice and do exactly what the surgeons told him to do. He was chomping at the bit, and he's looked good. The way he's running, the way he's turning on the ball, I think it's way too early to sort of say whether or not he's going to be the same player that he was. But if he's even 90% of that or 85% of that, that's pretty good. And I do think that the Indians, unlike their model from the movie Major League, I don't think that if Grady gets off to a good start and they have an opportunity to trade him, that they're going to take that if they're winning. And especially given the mediocrity of the American League Central, I think they're going to keep on winning.
Going to the National League, everybody was so excited about the Phillies having these 4 starters. What's been the buzz these first 3 weeks on those guys?
Well, that they've pretty much been as good as expected. I know Roy Halladay got beat up yesterday by the Brewers, but he's generally speaking, when you talk to pitchers, and you ask, okay, who do you look up to? It's always Roy Halladay, and he's going to have a great year. He'll probably win the Cy Young Award. And Cliff Lee, we saw last week what he's capable of doing. The big issue for them is Utley going to come back and give them anything? They really don't know. They're talking now more about mid-season for him, and if they can't get him back to where he can be a help for them this year, then you can bet that Ruben Amaro will be out there trying to pry somebody away from another team. Because, as one owner said privately to me, look, David Montgomery, the Phillies owner, has so much invested in this team, there's no way he's just going to sit back and wait and try to win with what they have. If they need to upgrade that offense, and I think they will, they'll go get somebody.
Is it fair to say that they're in a terrible division and they can take their time and really try to figure this out?
I think it depends on the Braves because they're the one team that can really consistently challenge them. They've had some real offensive issues at the beginning of the year. Dan Uggla hasn't really gotten off to a very good start. Nate McLeod had a great spring and has not hit well at the beginning of the season. They did break out against the Dodgers on Tuesday night. And I think that, I wouldn't say that in the rotation the Braves can go toe-to-toe, but pitching staff for pitching staff, the Braves are just as good as the Phillies because the back end of their bullpen is so outstanding with Craig Kimbrell and Johnny Venters. So I think the Braves are going to hang in there. I actually picked them to win the division, and I think they, like the Phillies, will go out and make trades during the year because the Braves, maybe more than any team in baseball, have trade chips to deal in July because they're so loaded with young pitching in the minor leagues.
I was speaking of the Braves. I was looking at Derrick Lowe, who I never felt good about the Red Sox letting him go because I thought of all the guys who were so underrated and chipped in 2004 in the playoffs. He's one of the lost guys that nobody remembers. Like he started Game 7 on 2 days rest in the ALCS.
Yeah.
Since they got rid of him, you always kind of wondered, could he do it consistently and all that. He's developed into, a really, really good starter. I mean, you couldn't find 5 more guys that have been more consistent than him the last 7 years.
And you know what? And I give him a lot of credit because, and I don't know him that well, but it seems like that he's made, a sort of an evolution as a person as he's gone along, as he's gotten older. He's made different choices, and I can tell you, that before their workouts down in spring training, you'd be there in the dugout and you'd look up in the stands, and there's Derrick Lowe going stare after stare after stare. Whatever he is, 38, 39 years old, and I was standing next to one of the security guards there, and the security guards, believe me, they know more than anybody because they're there every day, and it's not just, a dopey baseball writer dropping in for one day. Security guard looks at me and said, he's here every day doing that. He runs every day, and he, Derrick told me he made some adjustments with his slider and how he saves bullets between starts. He doesn't do as much throwing. And as you know, he's an unbelievable athlete. He's a phenomenal athlete. And, you love the fact that, you see a guy after 30 years old make the adjustments so he can pitch as long as he can.
Well, right now he has 159 wins. He has 85 saves. This is a guy who didn't become a starter until 2002. He was in the Boston bullpen basically from 97 to 2001. he has a chance to end up with 200 wins, which when you think that he didn't become a full-time starter until he was 29, that's pretty amazing. I would rank his career among the 10 weirdest baseball careers of the last 30 years, non-steroids.
He's kind of like a Red Sox version of David Wells, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, where you kind of like, at the end of, like David Wells, the end of his career, you're like, wow, for all the stuff about, hating Cito Gaston and all the, stories about Boomer off the field and all the different issues and the fact that he and Joe Torre can't stand each other and all those things, you're like, he had a pretty good career.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, especially because, unlike David Wells, physically, I think Derrick's going to give himself a chance to be around a while. His finish last September was like one of those things that, few people in baseball really noticed how dominant he was down the stretch. I think he was like 5-0 with a 1.17 ERA in the month of September.
Yeah.
And you do wonder with that sinker if he's going to be a guy who could pitch until he's 42 or 43. And, if he finishes his career with 210 wins, all those saves.
2004 playoffs, that counts, I think. You got to factor that in.
Some columnist is going to write something and ask the question, is he a Hall of Fame candidate? I don't think he is, but the fact that we're even speculating on it really says something about him.
Well, since 2002 was the first year he became a starter, he had 32 starts. Every year after that, he was between 32 and 35 starts. The guy's never been hurt. I defy any. So you're almost looking at, it looks like, 9 seasons, and now he's in his 10th of being a starter. He's over like 255 starts for those 9 seasons. It's incredible. I don't think. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say the one, and I think to go back to David Wells. I mean, what they have in common is they're both phenomenal athletes. You hear stories about Derrick Lowe playing pickup basketball with his teammates in the same way you heard stories about David Wells doing the same thing, and that athleticism, has really carried him well into his late 30s.
How about Colorado? 12-5 right now. You buying it?
I am buying it. Now, they have to get Ubaldo Jimenez back to what he was in the first half last year, and his start against the Giants on Tuesday, it was more fits and starts. He came out throwing 91, 92. His last pitch was up to 96. He didn't have the same movement on his fastball he did last year, but it's just the first start off the DL. But, a couple things. I mean, they obviously have a National League version of Manny and David Ortiz with Troy Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez, and they have a very underrated bullpen. And I think if they get Ubaldo Jimenez back, that's going to be a team that's in there for long haul. A scout who spent a lot of time watching National League West teams was mentioning to me yesterday. He thinks that the two teams that the wild card team will come out of the West this year because of the depth of that division.
Wow, when was the last time that happened? I'm trying to think. It's been a while.
Well, they've actually had quite a. I can't remember.
It was last year.
Right. I think maybe Kevin Towers told me that if you look in recent years, that the Arizona general manager, in recent years, it's amazing how much success it was Ned Colletti, the Dodgers GM, pointed out that if you look at the National League championship teams in the last 4 or 5 years, about 70% of them come out of the National League West.
Wow. Tell me about the Royals, because right now their fans. Like my friend Connor, who's a big Royals fan, he finally broke down and got the MLB package on Saturday. He couldn't take it anymore, and then of course they immediately lost the next day. But they're 11-6. Really had an easy schedule so far. Like they had the 4 Seattle games, and they did play Cleveland. I'm looking at it now. But are you buying this? And what happens when some of their kick-ass prospects come up? If they're going to be over 500, and then they got guys like Hosmer coming up. Is that a team that could sneak in?
I don't think so. With their rotation, you worry about if that'll be able to hold up for the entire season. They've relied heavily on some relievers early in the year, and that usually, the Joe Torre teams will always attest. If you use your relievers heavy early, it'll probably cost you late in the year. But I do buy it absolutely as the first sign that the 2011 Royals could be like the 2006 Tampa Bay Rays or 2007 Tampa Bay Rays, where we are seeing, the first ripple of what could be one of the outstanding teams for the next 5 years.
All right. Well, that's some hope for the Royal fans.
Absolutely. And I don't pretend to know their prospects. I haven't seen most of them in person. But I can tell you this, before the trade deadline last year, when other teams were sort of combing through the Royals farm system, I kept on hearing from people, from scouts, from general managers, oh my God, they are loaded.
Yeah.
They are absolutely stacked. And, you know, they traded Zach Greinke right at the right time. His teammates couldn't stand him. He needed to get out of there. And they got value for him with Escobar at shortstop. And it looks like it's all going to come together in the next couple of years.
In Texas, though Hamilton did get hurt, he's out for at least 6 weeks, but still a pretty frightening lineup. And you think they're 11-6, and Kinsler and Andrus aren't hitting yet, and they got nothing from Bourbon. Do you where are you standing on them? Because the one thing that's a little fluky with them is the pitching. Like Matt Harrison, although he's looked good in every start, I have him on my fantasy team. I've been monitoring. I even started him last week against the Yankees, but he's still Matt Harrison. I don't know if he's going to finish the year with a 1.23 ERA. I'm a little skeptical.
No, and one of the big questions about the Rangers starting pitchers always is, once the heat comes in the middle of the summer, how are those guys going to hold up? But, I mean, if you were the Rangers and you're looking for answers early in the year, I mean, Harrison has been phenomenal. Alexi Ogando, who, you know, has had the craziest journey of any player in the big leagues to get to the big leagues. He's looked pretty good so far at the beginning of the year. Derek Holland's always been known as a talented left-hander, and he's shown sign that he's put it together. And John Daniels, the general manager, mentioned to me right on the eve of the season, he said, look, we just need these guys to have more good days than bad days because they're going to score runs. So there's some margin for error for that rotation. Their big issue is going to be trying to trade for right-handed bullpen help, and they're going to be joining a whole bunch of other teams trying to get that because they have a gaping hole right now in the middle of their bullpen.
It's funny, though, if you look at the Rangers starters individually, assuming that Harrison is real, like actually just watching the games, none of them are bad.
No.
I'd feel like at the very least you could have 5 decent starters who could throw 180 to 195 innings, whatever. Like you can easily win the division with that. The thing that worries me with them is the bullpen, because other than Felice, I mean, they have these setup guys, but I don't really totally trust any of them. And I think they thought they were going to get something out of Mark Lowe, and he gave them nothing. And it does seem like the move for them eventually, when they're healthy and everybody's back, is you trade Michael Young. I was blank for a second. Wait, that's the move, right? You're eventually going to have to trade him, but his 10-5's coming up.
Yeah, I don't think they are though.
I think they're keeping him.
I definitely have that feeling. First off, with Hamilton out now, for a couple of months, they need Michael Young. And Ron, we had the Rangers in Sunday Night Baseball the other day, and Ron Washington was talking about how they really like his experience. And both John Daniels and Michael Young in the last week said to me that once the season started, they're kind of moving on. And I don't think that in terms of them looking for bullpen help, that he necessarily would have a lot of value anyway because they'd be asked to eat so much money the contract that he's owed. But I can guarantee you this, that the Rangers will be one of the many teams that'll probably be calling the San Diego Padres about Heath Bell. Heath Bell this summer is going to be like a sort of poor man's version of Carmelo Anthony, where we're going to be talking about Heath Bell for 2 straight months because there are going to be about 10 teams trying to get him, from the White Sox. You might have the Yankees involved. It wouldn't surprise me. The Red Sox involved, the Rangers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where everyone's going to be trying to pick up the guy who could be, the one bullpen difference maker is available.
Well, Buster, it sounds like you need to tell ESPN that you need to live in San Diego while this plays out. Get nice sunshine. You could get Southern California. It's beautiful in June. You just stake it out. Do like the Edward or Brett Favre thing. Just live outside his house.
I lived there for 4.5 years in the early 90s.
Yeah, you know what the weather's like.
Yeah, I absolutely would. Running on the beach, all that stuff.
Do it.
Absolutely.
Heath Bell sweepstakes.
I should be there, right there next to him when they give him the news.
So if you're ranking Heath Bell 1 as the biggest trade chip that's out there, who's 2 and who's 3? Well,
it depends a little bit on what happens with Tampa Bay. We know, their front office is as progressive as any front office. Going into the spring training, I think the value of James Shields was sort of considered to be at a low ebb because he finished up so poorly last year. His last pitch last night was 95 miles an hour. he threw great. And we've seen the Rays, as pitchers become, their veteran starters become more expensive, from Scott Kazmir to Matt Garza, they will make a move, and they're now in the process of trying to build their next wave of talent. So if they're not close in the race in July, I think they'll trade James Shields, and if he continues to throw this way, he's going to have some value. I think B.J. Upton will be an interesting guy as well.
Well, you wrote something in your blog that was very interesting, and I identified with it, because there's a guy in my AL Keeper League that's like this. The Rays, because they cut the ties with Kazmir at the perfect time, and it appears that they may have cut ties with Garza at the perfect time, they might be one of those teams that you don't want to trade with, because if they're peddling something, it's a little bit like Oklahoma City's Sam Presti in basketball. He's peddling Jeff Green. Celtics get Jeff Green. He's been terrible. Do you want to trade with these teams that actually seem like they really know what they're doing when they're getting rid of these guys?
I wrote that, and within 4 hours, there was a member of the Rays organization who sent me an email and said, "That's ridiculous. We've made some terrible trades," in an email. And I said, "Look, I'm just a messenger here. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing from other general managers, that they're like, boy, these guys really evaluate their players well." And the response was, "We don't want that reputation." Kevin Towers, the GM of the Arizona Diamondbacks, has that reputation when it comes to dealing pitching. I think that when Theo makes trades, everyone tends to look at them a little bit more closely than they would otherwise, because he's generally regarded as the best GM in the sport. And Tampa Bay now, with Andrew Friedman, that's going to be someone that they're going to think extra hard about it before they make a deal. Not because he does anything untoward, but just because he's so dang smart.
I'm stunned that you think Theo is regarded as the best general manager in baseball.
I polled I'm trying to remember the exact number. I did a story on this last summer, between 12 and 15 general managers, and out of that group, I think it was 15 GMs, and out of that group, I think Theo had 9 of the votes, and easily won. And the answers back, it wasn't like hem-haw, well, I'll take Theo over Andrew Friedman. It was, Theo's the best.
I'm shocked by that. I mean, I would have put him in the top 5, but I didn't think it was decisive. So who's number 2?
Andrew Friedman. I think he's getting a lot of raise for his work, a lot of respect. I think John Daniels, the Rangers, with what they've done, basically since the Teixeira trade, they've had an excellent track record in how they've done things. I think people respect the work that Brian Cashman's done, but of course the thing everyone always brings up with them is, well, they've got a lot of money. But I think in general people like dealing with Brian because they feel like he's a straight shooter. That's
weird, because I feel like you could say that about the Red Sox, and I think they're, this myth that they haven't had the same money as the Yankees. Only one time they went head-to-head against Teixeira, and the Yanks offered a little more money. I think if the Red Sox had to do that over again, they probably would have given him that money, right?
Yeah, and there's always been sort of a running debate. Was it Theo's fault, or was it Larry Lucchino's fault, or did ownership just sort of not fully see that the Yankees, view the Yankees as a threat? I think where the reputation comes from, in part, is because they were sort of at the cutting edge of the whole thing with draft picks, and doing things like type A free agents and taking advantage of situations like with Billy Wagner. It's moves like that, and the fact that the Red Sox were really the first big money, big market team to take advantage of both the farm system and the free agency front, which is why Theo's got such a good reputation.
And yet the Carl Crawford contract, and I know it's easy to say this now because he's not doing well, but it was kind of an atypical Theo contract. It was paying a guy more than, you're basically paying the sticker tag in the new car for a guy that wasn't probably worth that sticker tag. And I think it was you or somebody pointed out Carl Crawford versus Brett Gardner last year. Really wasn't a lot of difference, other than I think it was a few extra homers, but everything else was pretty much the same, and that's ultimately why the Yankees decided to pass.
It's the highest annual salary ever for an outfielder.
Yeah, and I just remember, I think when he took over, one of the big themes with him was that he wasn't going to pay for guys who were hitting their 30s. He didn't want to give those guys that contract of basically a little bit based on past performance, and yet that seems like what they did with Crawford to some degree, right?
Well, and I think that probably if going forward, one of the big things, and believe me, you could run down the list of every general manager in baseball and say, okay, well, this is where they made a mistake. Billy Beane's obviously done phenomenal things with Oakland. He traded Carlos Gonzalez and Andre Ethier. Both of those guys. And, how different would Oakland look right now if they had one of them?
Right.
Theo, I think the Lackey and the Beckett deals would be interesting things, going forward to see, how those things turn out. And I think the other one, and I would imagine Theo would be the first one to bring it up, would be how much money they've sunk into shortstop and trying to find a solution there.
To the curse of Orlando Cabrera. Although I think
Exactly.
they have a solution now with Jed Lowry, who probably should have been the starter all along, but he's cranking the ball. The Crawford deal was atypical because it seemed like a deal that was made to generate interest in the team and sell tickets and not to build the team. And I think they really got worried last year that they were going to not be filling Fenway Park if they didn't get that buzz back. Because by the end of last season, they didn't have a buzz. And they were getting blown out of the water by the Celtics and the Patriots and even the Bruins to some degree. And that was the first contract that he's handed out that I felt like he did it for a reason that George Steinbrenner would have done it in the 1980s. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although I will say, I mean, just in talking with them, I think that through the years, having struggled to cope against Crawford through the years, that was a huge factor. Someone who just kicked their butt, year after year after year, played well against them, ran all over the place. I would not, as opposed to, a Steve Kemp signing, where, I know exactly what you're talking about with George, because, growing up, you'd hear about the Yankee signings in wintertime, you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't fit. But I think with Crawford, the fact that, he had been so good against him through the years was part of the reason why early last year they really started focusing on him and doing a lot of background research on him.
I'm not against it because it's not my money, and if they want to spend it, God bless them. And, they had to pay what they had to pay. I think the Lackey contract was much more indefensible because that was a contract that when they did it, the fans that rooted for him in Anaheim were ecstatic and laughing. They were like, oh, my God, you're going to hate that contract. What are they thinking? And that always makes me nervous. But speaking of the Yankees, can you say Cashman kind of blew last winter? Is that a fair thing to argue at this point?
Well, they basically had, one Moby Dick they were going after, and they lost out. They missed, and they thought for sure when the off season began that they would get Cliff Lee, and they didn't get him. And I don't think that they, necessarily. I think everyone sort of believes that after they lost out on Cliff Lee that they didn't have a good plan B. I don't think there was a plan B in terms of I don't think they thought that there was anyone who could give them what Cliff Lee would give them, and their thinking was, well, you know what, if we don't sign Cliff Lee, then maybe we'll, sort of piece it together and then load up for the middle of the season. A little bit like when the Red Sox lost out on Teixeira.
Yeah.
It was, well, okay, well, we'll see what's out there in the trade market during the summertime. And this is the one part of their off season that was a surprise, is that some of these veteran guys that, they signed for minimum money deals, have actually looked better than they probably even expected. Bartola Colon, my goodness, who would have guessed he would be a solution? Freddie Garcia looked okay the other day. Eric Chavez might be, one of the cooler stories in baseball right now. Can that last? We'll see. But the fact that the Yankees owners stepped in and forced Brian Cashman to, basically take on Rafael Soriano tells you how panicked I think the Yankees ownership was after they didn't get Cliff Lee. I think Brian was more of the mindset of, you know what, we'll figure it out during the course of the year. We'll go out and make a trade, whereas I think ownership really scrambled because they were so worried about, what they considered to be a huge hole.
And obviously they had no idea that Phil Hughes' arm was going to shrivel or whatever happened to it.
Unbelievable.
Although there were signs last year as the season progressed. He got it. I think you even wrote about this, like stats by the month. It just got worse every month. So it's not like it was out of left field, but the fact that he's throwing 89 is a little weird. Well,
and it's not, you're right. He struggled, and you thought, okay, maybe as the season went along, he just got tired with the number of innings. The stunner is that he literally had no weapons in his first appearances. I mean, he had none. He was throwing. There were times when his fastball was 87 miles per hour, and beyond that, he's always been known as a guy who has a straight fastball. So it's basically just a little bit of above batting practice, and he was getting pounded. And
wait, hold on a second. Are we talking about John Lackey or Phil Hughes? I can't remember.
Well, remember that Saturday game when they pitched against each other, and there wasn't a swing and miss until the 55th pitch of the game.
No, batters were getting mad when they popped up a ball a little bit more than they wanted to because it was like the home run derby. That was terrible.
Kevin Youkilis was the first guy to swing and miss in that game, and his reaction was like, the over-competitive parent playing in a father-son game with a wiffle ball being thrown. Like,
right.
I missed that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, with Phil Hughes going forward, they really don't know what's going to happen. It's not like they're sitting here saying, okay, in a month, it'll be fine. They'll just do the long toss program. He'll be okay. They're sitting there saying, we have no idea what he's going to be.
Well, and also I think Ivan Nova. I think they were hoping he was going to be better, and not really sold on old Ivan. Don't think he has it. So.
Well, I think that he's going to be a guy who's probably going to struggle against experienced lineups and have a much better chance against younger, free swinging teams. Experienced lineups are just going to wait him out.
They're loaded with prospects, though, and a couple major league ready guys and Banuelos got everybody talking in spring training. It seems like they're in a little better position than the Red Sox would have been in the same situation for being able to trade prospects for stars.
Well, and they're counting on the fact that during the course of the summer that they'll probably be right in the mix for whoever becomes available, whichever starting pitcher. Who knows? Would that be James Shields? It's hard to imagine the Rays and the Yankees being able to work out a trade in the division. But somebody is going to shake free someplace, and I know the expectation among other GMs that the Yankees are going to get that guy, whoever it is. Last year was Roy Oswalt, and who knows who it'll be this year, but they will be all over that guy because they're going to need help in their rotation.
Jeter. Is this it?
It might be. In terms of him being an elite player, kind of like with Phil Hughes, we're not working on a small sample now. We're working on a bigger sample than that. He does not drive the ball anymore. I had a couple of pitchers tell me in spring training that when you face Derek Jeter now, you can basically throw the ball on the inner half of the plate and challenge him inside without being very fearful that he's going to do damage. Because what he would always do in the past, and you know this from watching him through the years, every once in a while he would turn on the inside pitch and he would drive it out like the first pitch of Game 3 of the 2000 World Series, or he would muscle hits out to right field. And now they are just pounding him relentlessly on the inside, and what he's generating is a lot of ground balls. I read a stat the other day. I think he is 78% of the time he's put the ball in play this year, it's been on the ground. And it's always
a little bit of a concern when somebody decides that they need to change their swing, who's headed for the Hall of Fame. If you or I announced that we're going to just completely change our writing style, at this point of our careers, it would be a little weird. You kind of dance with what brung you at a certain point, and for him to just be like, I got to figure, like that just makes me think we're near the beginning of the end here.
Well, and the fact that he changed back so quickly, he made the adjustment last year because he was striding into the pitch. He was basically jamming himself. So then he goes with this strideless approach in spring training, where he just basically lifts his foot and then puts it down. And 3 days into the regular season, he bags that. And now he's going back to this double tap thing that he's doing. And the bottom line is that in spring training, at the end of last year, he just hasn't gotten results. And it'll be interesting to see if he can turn around. I think that his defense is always going to be a concern now that he's going to turn 37. He's reached that age where every year he's basically playing for his job.
And the fans are never going to turn on him, I hope.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
He and Mariano Rivera basically are in the lifetime pass. Put it this way.
Good.
Clay Bellinger gets standing ovations at Old Timers Day at Yankee Stadium. I think Jeter and Rivera are safe. As
much as I hate the Yankees, just as a sports fan, I think, you have to have some respect at a certain point for what somebody did. And I that would kind of be bad turned on.
I kind of feel the same way. I think I told you in the past. I was a huge Lakers fan as a kid, and I hated McHale and I hated Bird, and I didn't really hate Parrish because he's not the type of personality you'd hate. But then I miss him now.
Right.
I mean, I just respected them so much as competitors, and that's probably the way that you feel about Jeter and Rivera.
Yeah, well, no, believe me, I'm gonna be dancing when both of them are done, and I can't believe Rivera is still doing it. I thought it was nice to see him blow a save yesterday. Last question. This is very important. Zach Britton versus Michael Pineda. Who do you have? Whose baseball card are you buying if you can only buy one?
Michael Pineda, based on what I've heard from scouts. They basically think that Michael Pineda could be the 1A to Felix Hernandez 1 if the Mariners decide to keep Felix long term.
Are we? So we're officially going with Pineda, not Pineda. Because I've heard it both ways, and I'd like a group decision. So we're Pineda.
The NEA is not there.
Okay.
So it's Pineda, according to the Mariners. Yeah,
Okay.
A fastball in the high 90s, great stuff, great body. Tremendous pitcher's body. It looks like he's a guy that could sustain for a long time, and as good as Zach Britton and unique as he is, with that great left-handed sinker, Pineda, without a doubt. I mean, to be able to accomplish as much as he has at that age, and to make major league hitters look that bad at that age, in your long-term keeper league, Bill, take Pineda.
Buster, I hate to break it to you, but he's on my keeper team, and so is Britton until like 2014.
Nice.
I'm invested in these guys. Thank you. And I will say this. A friend of mine said this about Pineda. He's the first pitcher I've seen in a long time, and I can't even remember the last version of this, that when you're watching him, he looks like the oversized little leaguer who might be 15 years old and the parents gave the phony birth certificate. That's what he looks like on the mound. It looks like he hasn't grown into his body yet. He almost looks like a giant wrestler or something. And you see this guy throw. He's throwing 98. The ball's moving like crazy. He's got arms. His arms and things are flying. And the hitters kind of look terrified against him.
And, I love reading the quotes the day after he pitches where, veteran guys on the other teams are basically saying, okay, that's the real deal. Because, veteran hitters will sort of grudgingly address questions about young pitchers typically, and they'll go, well, he wasn't that good. You actually heard some of that with Strasburg last year.
Yeah. Where,
opposing hitters were saying, well, you got things you can work on. And what you're hearing a lot of from opposing hitters about Pineda is he's the real deal, and he's only going to get better. And by the way, I play in a keeper league where you actually get to keep the players forever. And 3 years ago, I took Buster Posey because I had to take Buster Posey. I couldn't not have Buster Posey on my team for the next 15 years.
Nice. Well, on Friday night, he is pitching at home in Safeco against the Oakland Athletics, a night game. And I think, I don't want to jinx it, but I think that's a game that you just monitor. You just don't know. That's a nice lineup for him in a park that is just great for him. I like everything about the Pineda era. But I will say this about Britton. We talked about Derrick Lowe earlier, and to have a lefty, faster-throwing version of Derrick Lowe is going to be pretty interesting over the next 15
Mike
years.
Flanagan, of course, won a Cy Young Award for the Orioles years ago. He works for the team now, and he told Tim Kirkjian that Zach Britton throws a pitch he's never seen any other major leaguer throw in terms of a left-handed starting pitcher. He said, I have never seen a left-handed starting pitcher throw a sinker like that. And my favorite angle so far to watch Zach Britton is directly from center field, and the ball, and you remember when Fernando Valenzuela came up, he had the screwball that would break away from right-handed hitters, and that was the pitch that made him famous. Well, he was throwing that at 80 miles per hour. Zach Britton's throwing his at 94, 95, his fastball. And you know what? That's a great weapon. And when I think that first start against the Rangers, he generated 16 ground ball outs. So you might have hit it big with both those guys.
I forgot this was the last question. That wasn't the last question. This will be the last question. You tweeted something, I think yesterday or the day before, about Lance Berkman. He's getting around on the ball better than ever. Or not better than ever, but he's getting around the ball again. His bat speed's back. And just instantly I read it, and I thought, steroids. And My question is, when will I stop reading things like that and just immediately assume that performance enhancers are involved? Or is that the way the rest of my life is going to be as a baseball fan?
That you're doomed for the rest of your life to think that way. And I last year when Jose Bautista got off the great start, and someone wrote a column on the on the internet, actually in the year before with Raul Ibanez, and there was this great outcry saying, well, that's not fair. You can't speculate. You know what? Who knows? And if the players of today have a problem with it, then they should pick up the phone and call Rafael Palmeiro and get mad at him, or pick up the phone and talk to Mark McGwire and get mad at him, or all the other players who looked into the camera and said, "No, I don't do steroids."
Yeah.
That's one of the fallout, piece of fallout I think that we have from the steroid era.
Well, I know when Manny in Tampa this year, everybody was talking about how great he looked and bat speed's back, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. He was
right
certainly not somebody we drafted
the whole time, no question.
It was, oh God, and
the whole time when when I heard he looks great, bat speed, got the V upper body, looks much stronger, and you'd go, well, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, and that's something that I guess it never goes away. I mean, Jeter goes on the DL for 2 months, and he comes back, and all of a sudden his bat speed's back, and he's put on 7 pounds of muscle while he's away because he decided to weight train more. That's just how you're going to think now. It's kind of depressing. It also makes me wonder if we should the fact that Rivera, who I would say the 3 most confident guys, or the people that I'm most confident in that didn't do it, are Rivera, Jeter, and Greg Maddux. Is that a fair list?
I would have Jeter and Rivera on that list.
Yeah. So when
not
Rivera,
saying anything not about Greg Maddux, just to clarify there, I don't really know him that well.
Okay. I'm of the opinion that these guys, we disagree on this. I think all these guys should be in the Hall of Fame. We just should say in their plaque that they cheated. I think on Rivera's plaque it should say, not only did he not cheat, but he did all this against all these guys that were cheating. Like, he should get a bigger plaque, I feel like, than most of the Hall of Famers. Because it's insane that he put up these stats.
Yeah. He's like the Jerry Rice of baseball, where, the guys behind him at his position, they're not even close. And they're not even, really in the same conversation with him. We actually do generally, I voted for McGwire. I'm going to vote for Clemens. I'm going to vote for Bonds. The one guy that I'm not going to vote for is Manny, because I think, you have to put it in context, and, for years baseball didn't do anything about it, and I have a hard time applying retroactive morality on those guys like McGwire. But you know what? Everyone sort of bought into the rules, signed on for it, including the union. And I think starting in 2006, that for me is sort of like a tipping point. And that if you cheated after that, that's different than cheating before 2006.
That is something that I would love to argue with you on the next podcast. But for now, we're gonna have to go. Buster Olney, we will see you on ESPN.com Insider, my favorite baseball blog. We'll see you on Baseball Tonight. What else do you? What other plugs?
Sunday Night Baseball.
Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah,
excellent.
We're doing that, and seems like there's always something going on.
Hopefully next time we talk, the Red Sox will be over 500. Talk to you soon.
Okay, Bill. Thanks.
And now a phone call that I've been dreading for most of this baseball season. My buddy JackO, diehard Yankee fan.
Complex Litigation, this is John.
I'm not even giving you the O, Johnny.
Come on.
I'm going to give myself the O, Billy.
At the rate things were going, I was wondering if we were ever going to speak again.
I just got cheered up because we talked to Buster Olney right before you, and he was talking about how it really might be it for Derek Jeter. That made me happy.
In the old days, I would have screamed blasphemy, but I watch the games. I can't do that.
You can't make a case?
I could pull the Nathan Sturm and just be like, is it me? It's him, right? It's not me, with a long cigarette ash, but I'm not going to do that either. It's
probably it for Derek. Now, if Derek could take PEDs and rejuvenate his career and not get caught, would you encourage him to do so?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
of course.
I figured.
Absolutely. I'm just rooting for laundry. I don't care about the ethics involved in the situation here.
Maybe you should send him some anonymous email tips for some places in Mexico. Pick up some packages.
Maybe the next time Big Papi's in town, he could leave his pharmacist's name for him.
Oh, Johnny, throwing darts. So you have a lot to gloat about right now. The Red Sox season has been pretty much a disaster so far, and everybody's panicking. The 0-6 start, the greatest team that money could buy, has not been so great. So I'm going to allow you to do some gloating. Go ahead.
Well, this would have been, this would have been a lot sweeter on a day when Mariano didn't blow the save the night before. If the Yanks were sitting at 10-5, it'd be much more gloat-worthy. Because the Yanks aren't really setting the world on fire. I mean, if they had like a 8-game lead now at this point, as they should, I would be much happier. But yes, I'm not going to lie. I've greatly enjoyed the Red Sox implosion. I think is probably the best term for it. Just because of so much preseason hype.
Yep.
I mean, just so over the top. And I think I learned this from you when we were in college and we were, let's say gambling were legal and we were gambling on football games, which of course it wasn't and we weren't, but let's just assume that.
Yeah.
And we would look through the Sunday Boston Globe, and any time the football experts picked one team, you would say that was always the kiss of death.
Yeah.
When every single expert picked, whatever game, the Dolphins to beat the Jets or something, if teams were relatively evenly matched and everybody went one direction, it was a blaring sign to run the other direction and go with the other team.
Yeah.
So this year, I mean, I've never seen a team that was picked so universally by every pundit and every expert in the sports world. I mean, universally, every expert at ESPN had them at least in the World Series, if not winning it. Even the New York papers, the New York Post picked them to win the AL East. And I mean, I understand that they had some big additions, but as people that follow me on Twitter will attest, the first day of the season, I said that I thought they were grossly overrated. I didn't think they were leaps and bounds ahead of the Yankees and ahead of the field.
Yeah.
And, granted it's April 20th, and last time I had a rant on a podcast about something, UConn won the national championship, so I want to be very careful here. But
we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, at least UConn's women's team didn't win, though.
Yeah, I got something to hang my hat on. Last time I did a rant, and it resulted in a parade, so I better be careful what I say here. They're gassing up the duck boats as we speak, as I get warmed up here.
Well, if it's any consolation, that title is going to be vacated in about 18 months.
What title? Oh, the UConn title.
UConn men's title.
Yes. Yeah, let's hope.
I'll frame you the record book where it just says an empty name next to the 2011 champions.
Hopefully they'll let me.
That page.
If they have to cut the banner down someday, hopefully they'll let me buy it.
Well, you mentioned. I always had the nobody believes in us theory.
Right.
Maybe there's an everybody believes in us theory.
A corollary to the Ewing theory somehow. Yeah.
Because Buster was saying how tense the Red Sox look, and it's not like we suck kind of tense. It's like, oh my God, I got to do something, and everybody's kind of pressing, which is weird for baseball because it's such an individual sport. But at the same time, it can infect the team, and you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, they're clenching the bats a little tight and everything, and maybe there was a little too much hype. And I mean, I'm surprised at the vehemence or the vehemence that people have turned on Francona. That it was camp happy face in spring training, and they were playing golf and too laid back, and they weren't ready to start the season. I mean, I know he's kind of a player's manager, but these guys have been around the block before. They know how to prepare for the season. I just think that, I mean, the ridiculous article that I linked to on Twitter from Nesson where the guy compared them to the 1927 Yankees.
Yeah.
And I mean, in hindsight, it's the funniest thing ever written where he talks about how Dice K is going to be an all-star. I mean, it's hilarious.
I didn't think it was very funny.
But people really bought into the hype.
Yeah.
Probably because the Red Sox broke with character and spent basically $500 million in the course of a week or whatever when they went out and got Gonzalez and Crawford. Everybody figures, oh my God, look at that lineup. Who do you pitch to? But it turns out you pitched to Saltalamacchia pretty comfortably.
your feet are pretty comfortable underneath you.
And you'll take your chances with J.D. Drew and Scutero before they put Lowry in there. So it turns out there's a lot of guys you can pitch to. And Carl Crawford, for that matter.
I will say there's nothing worse than I would rather just root for a bad team that didn't have a big payroll or a team that underachieved or whatever. But there's nothing worse than rooting for an underachieving team that spent a ton of money.
Right.
There's just no upside at all. You're just angry the whole time. There's nobody to even fixate. There's so many people to get angry at. You don't even know where to go.
Well, that's just it. I mean, when you look to point fingers and you want to throw somebody under the bus, it's like, what should they have done differently? They went out and traded for Adrian Gonzalez, who everybody thinks is going to be the answer to Teixeira, and they went and signed Carl Crawford, who, with Jason Worth, was arguably one of the top two offensive free agents on the market. So what is it that they shouldn't have done? What mistakes did it's not like in the past years where Red Sox would say, well, the Yankees went out and bought all the guys up, so we couldn't go get a free agent, or why won't they spend money? They spent money. So far it hasn't worked out.
Yeah, they spent money, all right.
$142 million for Carl Crawford. The funny thing was, one of the Twitter wars I had on the opening day was when I said, who is the Red Sox player that's overwhelmingly better than his Yankee counterpart? And a lot of people said, well, Carl Crawford is overwhelmingly better than Brett Gardner.
Yeah.
It turns out he's not. They both suck, as it turns out. You could have got 130, no home runs, and 2 RBIs for a lot cheaper, as it turns out.
There was a study that there wasn't a lot of difference between those two guys last year anyway.
Not a $20 million difference anyway.
Yeah. The Red Sox are in Anaheim this weekend. And L.A. Red Sox friends are in this email chain, whether to get tickets and all that stuff. And hench emails. The subject heading is just so we're clear. So I was like, uh-oh.
Oh, boy.
And then the email reads, Crawford is a $142 million platoon player, and Lackey is an $80 million Eddie Whitson who can't pitch at home. Fantastic. I'm passing on seats for this weekend. What a panic email.
When you spend $142 million for a guy, you would hope that you would have to sit him down in the first 2 weeks of the season immediately after 2 days off so he could, quote, get his head straight.
Well, I wish he could pitch in Oakland. Not actually for the A's. I just wish he could pitch in that park against the Oakland A's every time. I think he'd be fine. Yeah,
and Lackey was displeased. He was. I read in the Boston newspapers today online that a couple verbal jabs after the fact about having to throw to first base, and I just work here. Shades of Keith Folk, a little bitterness there. I love it. That's what they really. That's what their one thing they're missing is some dissension. Yeah.
Hey, John. How about this? We'll tear up the contract and you go find another team.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you say?
Exactly.
And the Crawford one, I actually think is going to be fine. He seems like one of those guys that just puts too much pressure. He got that Paul O'Neill side to him, it seems like.
Yeah, he's going to turn around. I don't think he's going to be the player that people envision, though, like these predictions that he's going to hit 30 home runs and, predicted to be the MVP. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a $142 million player, let's put it that way. Normally you go out and sign that guy, and he's going to be A-Rod or Teixeira. He's going to hit 35, 40 home runs. He may steal a lot of bases. He may have a decent batting average, but people are going to be questioning. He's going to replace J.D. Drew as the guy that everybody beats up for a huge contract.
I do worry with him that he has such a cool name, and the name ties into how good he is.
Yeah. That
it was worth an extra $50 million.
The guy you're missing is Victor Martinez. I think they're missing handshakes in the locker room.
Oh, there's no question.
Not just his catching ability. Not just his ability to throw the ball back to the pitcher that you missed, too, but his ability to loosen up the clubhouse.
I said this to Buster. Every time they show the dugout, nobody's talking.
Well,
Pedroia seems like he's talking, but he's not talking to anybody. He just talks.
As the resident anti-sabermetrics guy, I realize the computer people will all murder me for this, but the old school baseball person in me, you kind of need some guys like a Malat type who's going to loosen things up, and like a Swisher, some guys that aren't like these automatons, these robots that, Bill James' computer says they're going to play well, so they're going to play well. I mean, they have a team that basically, except for Pedroia, has no personality. I mean, Big Papi is shades of Big Papi, but I mean, the rest of the guys, Carl
Big
Crawford.
Papi has a personality. He'll do the thing where somebody will drive him in and he'll step on home plate and then he'll overdo pointing to the guy at second base. Like, he'll do that kind of stuff.
I think he misses Manny, though.
I do too. They never should have been split up.
Drews and Adrian Gonzalez seems like a nice enough guy, but he's not going to set the world on fire.
Oh, you just reminded me. That's another thing you get to gloat about. It's only fair.
Yes, what's that?
The Manny thing.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, in Red Sox land, of course, he didn't start doing PEDs until he left them and go to the Dodgers.
It was when he went to the Dodgers. That's what happened. He moved here and he got corrupted.
Got caught up in L.A., the fast Hollywood lifestyle.
That's why it was like
his new team. Exactly.
It was like Less Than Zero with Robert Downey Jr. and James Spader and Andrew McCarthy. The same kind of thing. He got caught up in the wrong crowd, and they were like, "Hey, Manny, try these." He started hitting the ball much harder.
Exactly.
Like, "Ooh, essay, I'm going to keep trying these."
Right.
And that was it. That's what happened, Johnny.
That's right. It's a shame, just trying to hang on late in his career. He never dabbled in that stuff in Boston. No, that was pure as the driven snow back there.
Well, he had his bat speed back then, John. He didn't need it. The guy's a hitting savant.
Exactly, yeah. Right. Poor Manny.
Hey, listen, a lot of people have come to L.A. and fallen off the tracks. He's not the first. He won't be the last.
Let's look at Charlie Sheen.
It's great that to Manny that the second steroid suspension now ruined his legacy somehow, not just here, but also in the Dodger fans look so fondly at that whole stretch they had with him.
Right.
Now that's been tainted, too.
When you had a whole section called Manny Wood and they all bought the dreadlocked do-rags and all, that's all gone now.
And let me tell you, there's no better way to differentiate the classes in L.A. right now than to see the guy wearing the Manny jersey. That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's rough.
That is I do not have enough money to buy an Ether jersey yet.
I'm stuck with the number 99 he had in L.A., right? The 99 Manny jersey. Yeah, that's a rough one.
So how are you feeling about the Yanks going forward? By the way, I saw footage of you at the funeral, and I thought you handled yourself really well.
The funeral for Derek Jeter?
No, the funeral for Phil Hughes' right arm.
It was an emotional day.
I thought your speech was excellent.
Well, it's tough times. Yeah, I mean, that's what's dampening my spirits. As much as I would love to be doing a dance about the 2011 Red Sox. I mean, I can't say as I'm really fired up about the 2011 version of the New York Yankees,
right?
Who I think have a lot of questions. I mean, a plethora of questions, if you will. I will say I'm happy. I love Russell Martin. He's such a huge upgrade defensively from Posada. It's not even funny. And his bat has been great. I mean, health is going to be an issue for him, but the early returns for him have been fantastic.
I don't understand that. I'm confused by Russell Martin.
What about him?
Well, he's in the Dodgers. The Dodgers are, at night games, I'm watching the Dodgers, whoever the West teams are, and I have a little passing interest in the Dodgers because they're a local team. I have friends who like them, and
sure.
So I was kind of monitored what was going on. And Russell Martin was basically a dead fish up there, and now all of a sudden he can hit again.
I don't know.
The 604.
Maybe he didn't like the warm weather in LA. He's Canadian. He needed to be cold. It's cold and rainy here in New York, in the Northeast now, so maybe he likes that better.
I'd like to see him pee in a cup just to be safe. The 604 slugging percentage is a little suspicious for me.
He's hitting the cover off the ball.
Yeah.
He's been huge for them, and he's an upgrade defensively. I'm just going to move on from your aspersions that you're casting.
When I'm the sports czar, there's going to be 10 people every month that would just be no questions asked, pee in a cup. I just want to look at it. Jason Kidd playing really well in those first 2 playoff games. Listen, congratulations there, Jason, but just give me a sample. I'm just going to test this for everybody's sake. I just want to be sure.
Your urine.
Yeah, I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want to look at it.
So I like Russell Martin. Teixeira is off to a very good start. He was hot, and then he had a little bit of a lull, and he's getting hot again. A-Rod is hitting the cover off the ball. He's fantastic. He's got just the right amount of Cameron Diaz, apparently. She's this year's Kate Hudson. And Cano is fantastic. So they have a great 3-4-5. The rest of their lineup is extremely shaky. Poor Posada. I mean, talk about Jeter being done. Poor Posada. Two of the 3 of the core 4 that remain. It's really sad times.
It's funny that Jeter's at the tail end, and he's the 3rd worst hitter on the team because Brett Gardner's hitting like
he's hitting like 120 or something. Yeah. He's awful. I mean, Granderson is okay, but he's not. He does have a 5-game hitting streak going at the moment, so I can't really throw him under the bus either. But
51 away.
I know Joe D's not resting easy tonight. Granderson is okay. He's not great. Their outfield is weak, I think. I like Swisher. He's a good personality guy, but you count on him in a big situation, and he's going to break your heart. Gardner's regressed.
What about, have you bought a Chavi jersey yet or no?
I'm ready to. He's hitting over 400 in limited appearances.
Get a cup for him.
They do have a good bench this year, a better bench with him and the corpse of Andrew Jones, who has flashes. He may take over for Gardner soon at the rate Gardner's going. He might be their everyday left fielder soon.
Oh, I would love that. I have him on my fantasy team.
And their pitching, Sabathia, he's been decent. He got lit up the other night, but he's been decent overall. But, we were counting on a lot more from Phil Hughes, who can't throw the ball, who throws the ball as hard as I can in wiffle ball.
Right.
For no apparent reason. And, A.J. Burnett is a roller coaster ride every night. You never know what's going to happen with him. And,
well, be careful. He's your number 2 starter.
I know, exactly. I mean, he pitched okay yesterday. He pitched well enough to win. And he's undefeated this year, but he started off good last year and got ice cold, and he just makes you nervous, very nervous as a Yankee fan. And then, Nova's been terrible. And Freddie Garcia was good on Saturday, but I don't like guys who rely on changing speeds and throwing the hitter off because he throws about 87 miles an hour, too,
the Chief. Well, You have a lot of prospects, and if George were still alive, you would just be trading prospects for guys who could help now. Do you think that George's spirit lives on in his sons?
Well, we've had this conversation before, and I worry about Hal and being a bean counter and worried about money. So I don't, and what really worries me about the Yankees is that team president Randy Levine seems to have the owner's ear. Cashman had his nose out of the joint about them signing Soriano, who's been good for them. They have a good bullpen. I know Mariano blew it last night, but their bullpen is a strength of theirs. He was down on signing Mariano, and I don't really want Randy Levine having a lot of sway on player decisions. Randy can be in charge of things like building overpriced stadiums, but I don't really want him to be in charge of choosing players.
Soriano has a 7 ERA. You going to stand by that comment?
Yeah, he's been good for them. He blew up once. He had one game where he blew up, and they blew the 5-0 lead they had. But that's one bad outing. It's early yet. He's been pretty much locked down. You
mean the one when he gave up 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning to Minnesota and single-handedly lost the game?
Yes.
Okay.
That one wasn't so good, but he's been good otherwise.
All right. How about Jabba?
He's been good. He's been really good. He gave up a run, I think, to the Red Sox. He's given up runs here or there, but he's been basically decent.
All right.
He's heavier this year, noticeably, to the point where my wife said, "What the hell happened to Jabba?" Like, she recoiled. But he's throwing a lot harder, too. Maybe
I like
one of these guys that needs to be beefier.
Yeah, I wish John Lackey would gain weight.
Well, he was bad heavy, and now he's bad thin, so I'm not sure.
I don't know what to do with him. I'd rather see him just get fat again. Just go David Wells. Go try to be 300 pounds.
Yeah, the Red Sox, I saw the other day, they have $194 million tied up over the next several years in their pitching staff.
Well, Beckett's good again, though. We got him back.
Yeah, we'll see.
He's been aces.
He has been. He was great against the Yankees, and he was pretty good his last start, too. Yeah, he's been decent. Speaking of peeing in a cup.
Oh, stop it. He's just healthy again.
Yeah, that's it.
For the first time in that Sunday night game, it was the first time in a while, and the Yankees didn't do their routine of just making 6 pitches per at-bat and wearing him out, trying to get him out in the 5th inning.
I know. It was like they were in a hurry.
They kind of gave up on it. Well, he was throwing strikes, and they couldn't hit him. So they were like, all right, well, maybe our best chance is hitting the first pitch.
Yeah, he was lights out. There's no question.
It was exciting.
And the National Treasure turned back the clock on Patriots Day and gave a good performance on Monday.
He did.
Unbelievable.
You never know how to trust those Marathon Day performances because it's 11 a.m. I always think the other team is just kind of shell-shocked.
Yeah, they're still hungover. Those guys haven't been awake at 11 o'clock in the morning in 10 years.
No, there's no way. It's such a huge advantage. If I was a bad team, I would schedule every game at 11 a.m.
The best is when they play a West Coast team on Patriots Day. Like the Angels are in town. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning for the Angels. They're like, what? I'm usually just going to bed right now.
They don't know what's going on. Well, it's going to be awkward when neither the Red Sox or the Yankees win the division, and the Orioles somehow are the AL East champs.
I know, Buck Showalter. Yeah, Buck's got the boys back.
Buck's laying the groundwork for the next guy who takes over after him and wins the World Series.
That's right. They're going to get a year out of Buck. They're going to fire. He'll get him to be like 500 this year and get fired, and they'll win the World Series. They'll win 110 games next year.
Yeah. Anything else, Johnny?
No, that's about it.
Anything else sticking in your craw? I'm glad you recovered from the UConn thing nicely. Yeah, I did. I've never gotten a response like that on Twitter. It was crazy. Oh, people are mad? Both. I was very appreciative of the supportive emails, and there was a lot of vitriol directed my way, though. I told you to prepare for it. Oh, I knew. I'm a big boy. I'll handle it. But yeah, a lot of people love their UConn Huskies. It was funny. I watched I didn't watch the coverage of the parade. I watched the news, which basically 20 minutes of a half-an-hour news program was dedicated to the parade on Sunday night. Yep. And a guy came on and he said, "Even if you didn't go there, this is Connecticut's team." It was like he was taking a shot right at me through the news. Painful. I recoiled on my couch. You have no proof, but it was still a shot. Absolutely. I took it personally. Well, somebody wrote a little blog post criticizing your thought that Connecticut you have to go to UConn to like the UConn. Editor of the UConn Daily Campus or whatever, yeah. He wrote that was in the college newspaper? Yeah, that was. That's exciting. That link. That was fantastic. Nice. And I liked how he wouldn't refer to me by name. I appreciated that. If you're going to bash me, at least give me some publicity. Maybe it's good when I run for governor. I could have plausible deniability that was in fact me. Well, I'm looking forward to the O'Connell Linda McMahon ticket. I think it's gonna be the one that pushes it over the top.
I look forward to having the Undertaker campaign on my behalf.
Do you think? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bitter was Gino Auriemma that UConn went on to win the title? He must have been rooting against them.
On a scale of 1 to 10, he's a 47.
He must have been like openly rooting for Butler, throwing things around as Butler was missing shots. Come on!
I don't think he's been seen since they went to the Final Four. Actually, usually he's on TV every night, and I haven't seen him anywhere. I think he left the country.
He's in exile.
We were just so proud of those girls anyway, though. Maya Moore, what a model athlete.
Hey, listen, when you're on top, it's tough to play a perfect game every time. You're going to have nights.
You got a target on your back every night.
You're going to have nights when you don't have it, and that's what makes sports so great.
One of my favorite things about the UConn championship thing, and somebody sent me the link the other day on Twitter to some article about Kemba Walker, and he's always touted as how he's going to graduate in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so they said how UConn has established a program for him to graduate because he's still a few credits short.
Oh.
So they have a couple of online...
That sounds a little fishy.
Well, it gets fishier. He's going to take a couple of online courses to wrap things up, and then his final credits will be achieved by having an internship. And the internship, they assume, will be with whatever NBA team drafts him.
What? That's not an internship.
So really, he's going to get drafted by, like, let's say Charlotte or whatever, right? And he's going to get drafted. He's going to get like I don't know how the NBA rookie salary cap works, but say a 3-year, $15 million contract plus a shoe endorsement deal. Are we really led to believe that he's going to show up the next day at the Bobcats headquarters at 8 a.m. and they're going to be like, Kemba, we need you to make some copies. Can you go print these copies out for the coach? Come on. Are you kidding me?
Kemba, the coffee machine's broken. We need you to go to Staples.
Exactly. I mean, is there anybody that really believes that? And
what now? What would be the point of that? What is the beauty of graduating him in 3 years? So you can say that he graduated in 3 years?
Well, I guess that he's like close enough that he could graduate in 3 years, and even if he was coming back, he would have just had to take like one class or something. So they're like, well, since he's turning pro now, he's so close, we'll arrange some system for him to graduate. But the internship with whatever NBA team drafts him, I thought was just fantastic.
I almost feel like you're making that up.
I swear. I had the link on Twitter. He also says in this article about how he just read the first book he's ever read in his life, cover to cover. William Roden's book, $1 Million Slaves.
You mean like for non-school book? He must have meant like non-academic book.
Ever book. He's never read. He said you could put that in there. Quote, that's the first book I've ever read cover to cover. 20 years old or 21.
But how could you be in an English class and not read a book cover to cover?
I don't know. At UConn, I guess books aren't required. Oh, I'm going to get some tweets about that one.
That's pretty strange. I'm going to have to research this story, Johnny.
I will send you the link. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. I don't even know what publication it was in. It was something online, but the internship with whatever NBA team drafted him is my favorite part.
Joe Mead.
Yes.
You graduated from Notre Dame, right?
I did.
Because I was going to say, if you didn't, you could have been my intern for the last couple of years, and we could have gotten some extra credits for you.
Write a paper about it.
I appreciate it.
Is there a grad school you want to get in? We could do the Kemba trick. Maybe is there a UConn grad school, maybe?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's the UConn Medical School and a UConn Law School.
Joe
sure.
Mead, do you want to go to law school? I think this counted as a law school internship.
That'd be great. I'd like to get an MBA if we could just have Kemba print out a document for me to frame.
That's good. So Joe Mead wants an MBA, and now you're 2 credits in, Joe. Congratulations. All right, Johnny.
All right.
Well, I'm glad you got the blood boiling of the UConn campus again.
Yeah, I hope they mention my name in the paper in the UConn Daily Campus.
Worst of luck to your Yankees, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at PodCenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.